Hello and welcome to this week's Small Caps podcast. I'm Peter Capsanis. Regenerative farming. Remember those two words because there'll be a pop quiz at the end of today's show. ASX listed company Wide Open Agriculture is a regenerative food and farming company based in Western Australia's wheatbelt. It's developed a food brand, Dirty Clean Food, which can be found at a range of supermarkets across WA. It's the first to provide conscious consumers with ethically sourced meat and plant-based products. The company recently gained a meat export license and just this week announced plans to enter the lucrative multi-billion-dollar plant-based market, particularly lupins, which helped skyrocket their share price. There's lots of angles to this story, so to tell us more, I'm joined by the company's managing director, Dr. Ben Cole. Ben, thanks for joining the Small Caps podcast today.
Oh, many thanks, Peter.
Regenerative farming, what is it and how does it differ from today's traditional farming practices?
Regenerative is relatively new, but it's actually a term of farming that is getting embraced globally. Amazon's food retailer, Whole Foods in the US, identified regenerative farming as the #1 food trend for 2020. And farmers across Western Australia, indeed Australia and globally, are now really embracing this approach of farming. It's an approach of farming that really focuses on three elements. The first is healthy soil, and with that producing very healthy and nutritionally balanced food, protecting the plants and the wildlife around your farm, and also the water cycle. And what that all wraps up around is really sequestering as much carbon as you can. So how it compares to what we call industrial farming is much more extractive, particularly around carbon, releasing a lot of carbon, whereas regenerative is about capturing and indeed sequestering carbon. So we feel it really aligned to the expectations of consumers. More than 70% of Australians are now saying they want to take action around carbon and climate change. And we allow them to do that by supporting farmers who are doing just that on their land.
So supporting farmers on their land, I'm assuming then as part of the arrangement, you're locked into a supply deal with particular farmers who have the same values and ethos as your company.
Yeah, spot on. That's a really big part of our value proposition. We go to farmers saying, firstly, we want to recognise that you're not just a commodity farmer. You're actually producing healthy, vibrant food that consumers really are demanding more and more now. The sort of the awareness and expectations of consumers around understanding what the benefits are to themselves, their own health, to the farmer, and to the regional community that it comes from, it's becoming more and more apparent. So we work with farmers to tell that story, to pass on a premium to them, to recognise the way they farm is better, but also to give them support and encouragement. Farming is a really tough gig. I live down in Williams in Western Australia. A lot of my closest friends are farmers. It's tough going. So they need support and they need backing. That comes from a company like Wide Open Agriculture, but also our customers who are really supportive and really loyal.
This whole clean and green philosophy and value, is that an inherent value by the managing directors of the company, or is that something that you felt you had to buy in on because there was this movement that sort of come into phase in more recent years?
No, it came from both angles, actually. I mean, both the all the founders of the company are very committed to environmental and social outcomes alongside building a very profitable business. But really, it's customer demand. I mean, you would be in the wrong market in food right now if you were not looking at producing food that was both healthy, low in chemical inputs, and also really communicating a very transparent story from the farm. In fact, our name, Wide Open, it really captures that story. We want to give consumers a direct line of sight straight back to the farm.
There's a backstory to how you were formed, Ben. Tell us how you came into fruition. What was the catalyst, the roots, the origin of Wide Open Agriculture, which incidentally, I should add, as given the fact that we are both West Australian, the name has a connection to the West Australian band, the Triffids, with the song Wide Open Road.
Spot on, Peter. Yeah, it's a good reference. Not a lot of people catch that one, but It was actually Anthony Maslin, the now chairman, and indeed Stuart McAlpine, who's a non-executive director. He's a leading and award-winning regenerative farmer practicing up in the northern wheat belt. Anthony Maslin really was in a place where he was looking for something with deep meaning after experiencing a very tragic experience. And with his experience in capital markets and raising, he listed the first solar energy company on the ASX. He knew from my background in business development and living down in the wheat belt, he said, hey, we should really start looking at the potential for building a business around something that actually allows farmers to farm in a way that they want to farm. I mean, in all the conversations I have with farmers, more and more of them want to farm like this. They would prefer to be spending less on fertilizers, prefer to be using less pesticides, prefer to be getting recognized for the value they contribute to the healthy food they create. But along right next to that were consumers saying, I want to know more about my food. I want to know where it's coming from. I don't want it to come from a black box and it just appears on the supermarket shelf or online. I want to get to know it. So to bring those two together is really what we do. We kind of joke, it's kind of a bit like a country dance. We're kind of hosting that dance between regenerative farmers and conscious consumers. Sometimes it's a little bit awkward, but once they start to really get going and the night winds up, then it's a really beautiful thing that we're hosting here.
Okay, so I'm interested to learn more about. I mentioned that you've got this food brand, Dirty Clean Food, and it's in a range of supermarkets at WA at the moment. So what type of food can we expect to buy under the Dirty Clean Food brand?
Yeah, Dirty Clean Food. I'll start with the name. So we really, it's competitive out there in the food space. You have 5 seconds on a supermarket shelf to get someone's attention. And we really wanted to make sure that we were recognized as being disruptive. So dirty is about wholesome, rich and healthy soil. Clean is about no nasties. So no fertilizers, no pesticides, no antibiotics and no hormones in the food that we offer. And then the food is about building a really loyal tribe, people that understand us and want to be a part of us. So we've done that really successfully. So Dirty Clean Food is actually online in supermarkets and at the top premium restaurants of Western Australia. They've had a tough time now, but they're certainly starting to reopen their doors. What we offer online is a range of animal protein and plant-based products as well. So we have grass-fed beef and grass-fed lamb as well. We now stock a regenerative chicken as well, and we do a sustainable seafood, oats, ground flour, and we've just started moving into some effectively some meals that you can buy for your family, working with local restaurants. That's really exciting because they're using our meat in the products, but then of course using their own local skills and recipes to deliver something really, really exciting for the consumer.
Excellent. So you pride yourself on being a provider of ethically sourced meat and plant-based products. Is that different to organic products?
Yeah, it is different. We looked very closely at the organic industry, and it's an exciting industry, and we think they do amazing work. But for us, regenerative is the one that lets us go to scale. It allows every farmer to get on board a journey of improving the health of their farm, and also it allows for a more affordable food. So we really believe that regenerative is kind of organic plus, because it allows such a wider audience, both of farmer and consumer, to produce and eat the food that they're seeking.
All right. So in turn, are farmers planting? Is there an element of, say, agroforestry attached to this, or whatever land they might be clearing to plant crops, etc.? They're revegetating at the same time. Is that a part of the process?
It is. I mean, all of our farmers, we work across those three elements of soil health, biodiversity, which would include tree planting and water cycle. But what I really believe in is that we don't tell the farmer what to do. That is up to the farmer. What we want is outcomes. We want to see that their soil health is improving. We want to see that the trees and the wildlife around their farms are getting better, and that the water that's running off the farm is getting cleaner. So I think it's very important. Part of regenerative farming is that it still gives the farmers a lot of autonomy to undergo the practices that they believe in.
Okay, so How have sales performed? Because ultimately this is a business. How have sales performed since launching the brand and up until say pre-COVID? What's been the
Yeah,
performance like that?
I mean, the last moving into 12 months has been fantastic. We've had quarter-on-quarter growth now for 3 quarters. The first 2 months of this quarter are looking very strong and looking to outgrow our most recent quarter. We had 32% growth in the last quarter-on-quarter. Our revenue is now just under 400,000. So what's exciting to us about that is that it's actually only the West Australian market. Obviously, not known as a huge domestic market, but we've found that we've got a really loyal, almost evangelical base of customers through online retail and also food service or restaurants. So now we're in a position where the easy growth leaders are looking at bigger markets like Sydney and Melbourne. But of course, those relationships that we're always consistently building in Asia, in Southeast Asia, where you have very large emerging economies from countries, the more established ones, Sydney, Singapore and Hong Kong. But we also think Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam, 3 very exciting, very large economies that really are aligned to our values, looking for healthy food, good for their family and good for their health.
Yeah, and I guess lots of alignment in terms of time zone alone for those markets as well.
Absolutely.
What
I
are
mean,
the
yeah. Oh, sorry. Just on that, I mean, as trading partners, WA has a great relationship with those around the mining sector. So, of course, yeah, it's a natural fit for us to go towards Southeast Asia.
So would you say that COVID-19, the advent of COVID-19, has only uh, ramped up sales in the last couple of months?
Well, it has. I mean, yeah. I mean, March was our record month when COVID-19, the sort of real start of it began, and April's also been very, very strong. So what it's shown to us is that our story was strong before around the provenance, the understanding of where your food's coming from and its impact on your health and particularly your immune system. And now that story is so yeah, it's very much more relevant with the onset of COVID-19. And then alongside that, we were multi-channel. So having an online home delivery service allowed us to pivot very quickly. And we're finding that our baseline has moved up. People are getting much more comfortable and familiar with home delivery and online service.
I mentioned earlier that you made an initial step towards producing a plant-based protein product. Before we dive deeper into that, what are examples of these type of foods?
I mean, the big ones are Beyond Meat and Impossible Foods. They're the burgers that basically now you can see in McDonald's, that you can see in the large chains. Indeed, Hungry Jack's in Australia has launched one as well. So they're effectively the meat patty that you choose in your burger when you either want to take a break or eliminate animal protein from your diet.
Yeah, okay, so the veggie burger, so to speak.
Yeah, basically the veggie burger. Yeah.
So you've entered now. You've announced details earlier this week to enter that multi-billion-dollar plant-based protein market, and
Yeah.
I did mention the word lupins in there, which sent your shares on quite a rather high. I think they more than doubled from around 12 cents to around 26 or 28 cents. I'm sure you'll correct me. Um, what does this mean for the company going forward, Ben?
I mean, we're a really strong company, and I think the plant-based protein is just a demonstration of how we are now seen as a kind of an innovative leader and disruptor in the food and farming sector. So we've got our established platform, our Dirty Clean Food brand, which is a really good cash flow business. But what gets exciting about the plant-based protein is it's just such strong alignment. So West Australia produces 60% of the world's lupins. And this technology unlocks it to be a protein that could potentially rival markets like soy, whey, and pea protein. So yeah, the numbers around those markets are immense. It's an $18 billion per annum market, and that's expected to grow very rapidly over the next 5 years. There's a growing interest in health and wellness and the food and consciousness around what you eat. So what this deal represents to us is the opportunity to enter that market and really rival some of the existing proteins. So the big one is soy. That soy protein makes up close to 99% of that market. So really to offer something with the same level of protein, with better nutritional value, with non-GMO status, it's a very exciting opportunity to enter and be a part of just such a fast-growing market.
And is that market particularly strong in the US? Is that where you're focusing your energies overseas at the moment?
This is Australian technology, which we're really proud of, and we're going to be developing it here in Australia. But yeah, we are looking at and already talking to a couple of people both in Europe and in America, where the markets are immense and really strong. But I mean, they're growing everywhere. This is a real sort of global metric that people are looking for alternatives around red meat consumption. But I think what's exciting for us is that globally, there's what they call a global protein gap. Another 2 billion people are joining us in the next 30 years. And with higher incomes and higher expectations around dietary consumption, people are just eating more protein. So it's actually very good news for people in livestock, and it's very good news for people in things like lupin. So we feel Dirty Clean Foods got both sides really well covered there, both from our regenerative livestock, but also now this lupin project as well.
You're into meats, oats, plant-based protein. They're the core focus for the business. Just so, how big are these markets? I mean, it sounds like this is a journey that hopefully you'll stay on for many, many years to come, particularly in light of the figures you just mentioned, 2 billion people over the next 30 years. Uh, I assume the vegans of the world would be quite happy with what you're trying to do.
Well, yeah, well, we're trying to let everyone know that our product offering, we would like to be in every aisle of the shopping aisle, and we would like to be keeping all conscious consumers all the way from someone who's committed to eating meat through to like what they call a flexitarian, someone who's happy to replace every now and again, through to vegetarians and vegans. We think the proposition is open to everyone, but they are huge markets. I mean, the meat market now is an $8 billion per annum market. That's just beef and lamb sales out of Australia to export markets. The oats, which we haven't had much of a chance to talk about, but oat milk is a very exciting sector. It's a two billion per annum sector already, plant-based dairy alternatives. It's captured already about 17% of the traditional dairy market, and it really is rapidly growing. So people might be familiar with soy and almond milk. Oats is the rising star in that game. It had 2,000% growth in retail sales in America over the last 2 years. It's a very, very exciting market, and we're just about to move into the final commercialization stage of our oat milk. And then plant-based protein, I mean, the sky is the limit. It's an $8 billion market now, but with the global trends, you're seeing what's happening with companies like Beyond Meat and Impossible Foods. They really are just expected to grow up to $40 billion within the next 5 years.
Well, Ben, just on that, you coming back to those particular markets, you mentioned some of those fast food outlets. You're in the supermarket space at the moment with the independent retailers. You're not with Coles or Woolworths at the moment, is that right?
Yeah, no, we've targeted intentionally the independent retailers, but I think we're at a position now where we're entertaining. It's time to start having conversations with the larger chains, but the independent retailers have been incredibly supportive. The online's great because we get direct access to consumers, and we love our chefs because they really know high quality food. So they're kind of our canary in the cage that let us know that we're always producing really high quality, tasty food.
In your recent investor presentation, you mentioned that the company is committed to carbon neutrality by 2023, and you mentioned this right at the beginning that carbon neutrality for the company kind of marries up with a lot of that consumer sentiment. What are some of the key elements that will help you achieve this milestone?
Yeah, it's carbon, but the interest in carbon is really coming as much from like you asked before, the company commitment, but also consumer demand. More than 70% of Australians are looking for ways to reduce their carbon footprint. So offering a food that does that is such a tangible way that people can make a conscious choice every day when they're walking through the supermarket or buying food online or going to a restaurant. So we've started with the process of becoming carbon neutral operationally in the next 2 years. We've made a commitment there. It starts with measuring. What are you producing now? Then reducing, and then where you have to, you offset. So offset means effectively getting trees in the ground, which is something we really believe in around our principles and attitudes towards protecting farmland. So we feel like the two just marry together so well. So it's an exciting proposition for a food company to be aspiring to that. And I think to us really demonstrates we're not only for profit, but we are very much a for-purpose company as well.
Before I wrap things up, Ben, is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, I mean, other than that, I think where we are now as a company is just ready to grow and scale. With that strong foundation of the Dirty Clean Food brand, it's a really strong, validated brand. So capturing new customers and validating new customers is very easy once the brand is well known. And then on top of that is the oat milk launch and the plant-based protein projects. So there's really kind of, I guess, a foundational strong business, and then these incredible upsides around oat milk and plant-based proteins. So yeah, it's exciting days ahead for Wide Open Agriculture.
It certainly is. It's fascinating. It's exciting, and I think West Australian consumers alone have already supported you, and I'm sure that the domestic market across the continent will get on board on this. And I think you're ticking the boxes across a range of things, and carbon neutrality and ethically sourced food. I think that's definitely the narrative and the sentiment that's being echoed a lot around the world, while at the same time maintaining a positive and fruitful business venture. So we do wish you best of luck going forward. Please keep in touch. We look forward to hearing more about the oats and oat milk industry there, and the niche that you're trying to carve into. So please do keep us informed. Dr. Ben Cole, thanks very much for joining the Small Caps podcast today.
Great. Thanks, Peter. Thanks very much.